Okay, we're back with part 2 of our conversation with Tom Carroll, the Archdiocese of Boston's Superintendent of Schools. Dan Schmidt and I are. And Dan, you were going to wonder about identity and support financial.
Well, if I could ask a question, Tom, about Catholic identity, certainly Catholic schools, at least in the Diocese of Milwaukee, are focusing on and have set up committees and so forth to make sure that the mission of the institution, apart from the importance of the educational aspect of bringing these young people up in their families and become successful and contributing members to the community, this issue of Catholic identity, as some of us know, or many people know, it's become more contentious in a way than perhaps it was at other times in American history. But the question to you, Tom, would be in terms of identity, the importance of that as you see it in terms of what you're doing and your fellow archdiocesan priests and lay people in terms of the identity of the Catholic schools, and then if you can relate that to how that shows promise for philanthropic support of the institutions K through 12, but also might raise some questions and difficulties for people who might be interested in your advice on this based on your experience.
Sure. So, I've done a lot of things over my career and ran about a dozen nonprofits and used to work in the government at a very early, young age, was involved in politics and stuff. And I think, part of our job is sales, right? We're trying to sell people on a proposition. And I think I ask every single principal, like, what's your value proposition? And if the value proposition is, we're Catholic, but you can't really define what that means, and we're nice to kids, as if public school teachers don't like kids, which, like, everybody goes in education, the first reason they go into is because they like children, right? So I think that's kind of fuzzy and amorphous. And I think I prefer a more simpler statement, which is our number one mission is drawing children close to God and setting them on the path to eternal salvation. That is our job. And there's nothing we do that's more important than that. So, I'm not opposed to people running STEM programs or STEAM programs or STREAM programs, or how they keep redefining and expanding the acronym, and all the other things that we teach within a Catholic school, because we've always had high academic standards. That's why we score better than most of the public schools. But our core mission is if we prepare somebody to get into Harvard, but they don't get into heaven, then we failed at our job. And I don't think when we have our personal judgment day that somebody had high SAT scores, but lost their soul, that we're going to be treated very well. So we may be on the down elevator instead of the up elevator at that moment. So everything I do is organized around that particular vision. Sometimes I've said it's putting the Catholic back in Catholic schools, but it's really just understanding what our historic mission globally has always been for Catholic schools, and it's eternal salvation. So I've spent a lot of time on hiring principals who agree with that. So far, I've had the privilege of putting in 35 principals out of the 100, about 75 are elementary schools and about 65 are parochial schools. So I've replaced 35 of the 65 in another 2 years. I would just by the normal attrition, I will have replaced 55 of the 65. So every single person who's been appointed since I've been in place is somebody who is committed to evangelization. Secondly, I started this spring, I created a program called the St. Thomas More Teaching Fellows. So I've literally, although it's extremely time consuming, have been flying all over the country to recruit the first cohort, which is just under 24 kids, kind of like an ACE program or Teach for America, but geographically bound, meaning the Archdiocese of Boston. And it's a faith-first hiring process. I'm looking for people who are on fire with their faith. And I'm also looking for people who are smart, intellectually curious, have work ethic, that pretty much consistently have had a job since they were age 16. The one thing about being a teacher is, one, you have to show up on time. You can't leave, the classroom empty. And it's a frustrating job, particularly as a first-year teacher. So you have to have had basically a series of crappy jobs in which you dealt with a lot of frustration. I think that's good training for becoming a teacher. It's not a bad training for becoming a parent either. Nobody likes cleaning diapers, right? So everybody's got to do something that you don't want to do. So I've recruited what I think are frankly some of the most astonishing young adults in the country. I keep referring to them as kids, which reflects my age more than theirs. But and then next year we're going to double that and recruit 50 and just keep going on from there. What I'm trying to do is to literally light a candle of faith in every single classroom in the Archdiocese of Boston. So when this is done, and I'm not going around firing people and stuff, I've only fired one principal. Everything else has been on the leadership side, maybe a half a dozen other people have been let go or encouraged to leave by pastors. But almost all of it is just taking advantage of attrition and then reconceiving what are the kind of people. So if you think of this as a championship that we're trying to win, here the championship is, we're trying to win is eternal salvation. You've got to put the right team on the field. I think the Catholic Church in many cases has been sitting in the stands and they haven't, the secular team is on the field and we haven't been on the field. And so we've been trying to accommodate the other team rather than realize that we have a 2,000-year tradition of belief. And we believe we're on the right side of history and eternity. I think we should have a little more confidence and a little more optimism and a little more joy about what we have to offer people. And it starts with showing up, and it starts making sure you have people on the field who actually know what we're playing. So if it's a football game, you don't send a bunch of tennis players onto the field. So I think that's what we've been doing so far. We haven't put enough people in who agree that evangelization is the number one reason the Catholic schools exist. Now, I'm not disregarding all the other wonderful things that our schools do. I care a lot about academic results. When I was running charter schools, we were tied for first in mathematics. I beat all the public schools within Albany. I beat, with a low-income minority population exclusively, I beat all the affluent white suburbs that were in the ring around Albany. So I'm a pretty competitive guy and I like winning and I like, posting results. So, but at the same time, I'm not going to lose sight of what the ultimate game is, which isn't that stuff, but rather eternal salvation. So I'm hiring more people that have missionary zeal, for sure. Yeah. And so the people look differently than they used to look. And it's no offense to anybody who's been here all along. There's a lot of great people working in Catholic education, but I'm very mindful of what we're trying to create over time.
So my question is terrible because, can we go from eternal salvation to policy? And you were optimistic about vouchers. We're speaking to you from Milwaukee. We worked at Bradley, very proud of what we would characterize as the success of voucher programs. I'm saying voucher to distinguish there from charters where there's been successes as well. But educational choice in the form, did those successes merely stave off the demise of Catholic education? Was it all worth it, Tom? What did we do?
I think you were in the business of saving children one by one. And I think the ripple effect of all the children that were saved in Milwaukee, or even more broadly in Florida, which has more than $1 billion in scholarships, I think is definitely worth it. And my direct job before I took this job, so I spent 2 years lobbying to get a national school choice bill through. And then the politics there changed to make it impossible, which is why I then resigned that job of my own volition to go do something else until the tides turned again. But I feel very strongly that it's unconscionable that in too many parts of the country, the quality of the education, which means your lifetime of opportunity, is denied to people based on where the geography of where they were born. If you were born in what was called kind of a bad neighborhood, your chance of success versus people that were born in a so-called better neighborhood are dramatically different. So the reason I like school choice is I think every child should have the opportunity for a great education, regardless of where they happen to live. And I think why that's not universally accepted, I think most people agree with it. And I think the main obstacle has just been an institutional adversary to that idea, and that's the teachers' unions.
Okay, how about this? Eternal salvation might not be the way in which a donor, potential or existing, would look at their mission. How do you sell eternal salvation as a mission to a donor who might not believe in it the same way you do, or would phrase it differently, or by
Right.
secular
So,
or another religion. I mean, you have to
correct. Right.
offer them something else, I guess, or what's an opportunity for a donor who
Sure.
might share that?
So I think, yeah. So people who are more into Catholicism than others find it appealing that we're actually doubling down on a faith and we're not apologizing for something that we should be proud of. Other donors are drawn to what's going on because they, for example, on the scholarship side, people, regardless of religion, and this was true in New York when I was there, and it's true in Boston, give money because they view it as taking disadvantaged kids and put them into a better educational setting. So for them, the religious component, it's nice, kind of in a broad Christian perspective, maybe. But some of the largest donors in New York City are Jewish.
Yeah.
One was libertarian and gay. I mean, it drew people from all over the place. The libertarian gay person who I knew well, and talked to him a lot about a $25 million contribution he made. He just thought they got better bang for the buck. And so he thought it was a good investment that way. So there's lots of different reasons that people give money. And, and Steve Schwarzman, who isn't Catholic, although his wife is, joked that he did it because he's in the hedge fund business that he did. He was kind of hedging his bets. So the Catholics were right and the Jews weren't. He was covering all of his bases. So he was joking at the time. But so people, and some people in some of the bigger cities, the Catholic Church is still a pretty major cultural institution. And so people are kind of drawn, to the cardinals and the institution and kind of the respect all of our service across all the different faces of the Catholic Church in terms of our global reach, in terms of services and helping the poor worldwide. So people come to it in a lot of different ways. And so not everybody's into the whole religion thing, if you will, but that is at the end of the day. And we specifically, and this is true universally, the Vatican recently came out with a document from the Committee on Catholic Education or Congregation of Catholic Education. We're committed to take people of all faiths and all walks of life and all cultural backgrounds. That's part of, our universal view is we take everybody. We never ask for a Catholic card when we help somebody who has an immigration problem or walks up to a soup kitchen or needs homeless services. So we're somewhat unique in terms of we serve everybody, not just Catholics. But at the same time, our mission is an evangelizing mission. And I think to accommodate the broader culture, a lot of schools all across the country have tried to ape what the public schools are doing. And to back, to my earlier comment, I don't think it's a strong value proposition. If you're going to act like a public school, why would anybody pay tuition? They can go to the better funded public school for free. So it's got to be more than that. And so whether you want to call it Catholicism, which I do, or just you're trying to bring children closer to virtue. So we have, for example, a tremendous number of Protestants enroll their kids in our school, even Muslims as well, because they like that the kids are being brought up in virtue within the schools. And they have concerns with some of the more crazy stuff that's being taught in public schools right now. And they know they're not going to find that in the parochial schools in the Archdiocese.
Yeah. Well, why don't we end right there? I think that's probably a good point on which to finish. Thanks so much for doing this with us, Tom Carroll, and you'll get a nice Giving Review mug from
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.